All right, guys, welcome to the Fence Armor channel. Today we are talking about fence types. Looking at fences, we can look at this many ways, how to keep fences looking good for a long time. We also want to think about what type of fence you have. What is the type of fence that you would select? Well, let's look at fence selection types. Normally, you're presented with fence selections that your local fence company is good at, what they like to build, and what is common in the area. So depending on if you're on the West Coast or the East Coast, that'll change dramatically. And even from one side of the state to the other, one county to the other. So it really is interesting to see the dynamics of fences. And if you do a cross-country trip and drive through it, you'll see how fences seem to change from one place to another. Some areas are more vinyl, some areas are wood, some areas are ornamental. They're all fences. They're just different based on consumer demand and in some cases what's required by a state or a county. So obviously fences around the prison are going to be a little different than fences around your own neighborhood, but they still might be chain link, but they'll be a little different. So we're going to talk about residential fencing for the most part, and as a consumer you have to put in fences typically if you have a pool, and that some areas require you to have a fence locally around the pool and a fence outside the pool area. So now you end up with two different fence types. So those types of fences are controlled by your local council or communities, and you'll have to check out what those happen to be so you're in compliance. So building a fence, is it for security or is it just to look good? You know, that's also something you want to keep in mind. If it's mainly to look good, then it's really your taste. Do you want it to be private, or are you backed onto a beautiful landscape and you really just want to keep out the deer? You know, those are things that you want to keep in mind. If you really live behind an area that you don't want to see, or a neighbor that you don't really want looking over, or you're looking over at them, then you want what's called, we'll say, a privacy fence. Has the panels in such a way that you don't see through it, or they can't see back through you. And privacy fences are typically 6 feet tall, and they'll go right down to the ground. So there's usually a bottom rail, and that bottom rail would be an inch or two above the ground, which will typically keep your pets in. And that's also an important thing. A privacy fence doesn't necessarily mean that all creatures will be kept out, but it generally will allow visually that people can't look in and you can't look out. Privacy fences are also typically made from wood or vinyl. Chainlink is not common, but you could take a chain link fence and run some plastic webbing through it to hide and make it into a privacy fence. So you've got a lot of different versions, and then you've got different nomenclatures. You know, you have what's called a neighbor-friendly fence. What's a neighbor-friendly fence? Well, that also changes where you are. A stockade fence can be designated as a neighbor-friendly fence where one side has all the pickets, so it looks like a wall of pickets, and the other side has the posts and the rails. Now, in some parts of the world, you put the panels right in the center of the post, which I think is the most attractive, and now your panels would all be in the middle. Both of you have a beautiful looking fence. The rails are on the center, the posts are in the middle, the panels look great, and nobody has to say, well, what side is better? Well, they're both exactly the same. As long as it's in compliance with the rules of your particular neighborhood or area, you'll be in a good situation. Why would you pick a vinyl fence? Well, in your area, if that's what everybody has and that's what you want, then, you know, vinyl is a good choice. Maintenance is typically less. You still have to clean it. You still have to protect it. The bottoms get damaged by weed whackers, lawn equipment. They crack, and now you've got this big gaping hole. Those things can be fixed, and certainly Fence Armor has products to be able to do that. So all fences have some need for maintenance. Some will have less. So if you have a vinyl fence, do you stain it? No, you'll never have to stain it. Will you need to wash it? Yes, typically you do. It does need to keep some maintenance, but it doesn't require the extent of maintenance that you would have on a wood fence. Things to think about on a vinyl fence, and there are so many different qualities. But ultimately, is it a good choice? Yes, if you like it, I think a vinyl fence can look great. They're usually much easier to put up. Ornamental fences, they're typically made of aluminum. They can be galvanized steel as well. Those types of fences are usually either dictated by, we'll say, property, because you must have an open view to a specific area, or you may have a beautiful view that you don't want to obstruct, but you just want to delineate your property line with an ornamental fence, and they look great. But as far as from the outside, they look pretty much the same. When you're picking, you can certainly look at it by cost. You can look at it by what is available in your local area. If you are doing your own install, aluminum's really light. It's easy to put in. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Steel will eventually rust, but aluminum can oxidize. So again, we sell guards for both. If you have a situation where you have a wrought iron fence, or you have an iron style fence and they're weed whacking along the bottom, well, you're going to have to paint them black. It'll rust. The city of Raleigh, North Carolina, their cemeteries there use fence armor to protect the bottom of their wrought iron fences, because they don't have to paint them every year, because they see a lot of maintenance, and their groundskeepers are always maintaining the area, and they're getting weed whacked continuously. So if you're in that situation, we have a clip-on version, both for aluminum and for steel fences, that will help interrupt the violation of those posts. Then, Chainlink is Chainlink. It's pretty durable. You really don't need a guard to protect a Chainlink fence. It'll last years and years and years. Galvanized steel, Schedule 40. There's a lot of different pipe manufacturers, but ultimately it's typically galvanized steel, usually about 150 thou thick walls. You can get thinner wall, but of course they're not going to last as long. And it depends on your application. Are you expecting a car to drive through that area? Then, typically that would be a more industrial application, and you'd have specifications written by architects that would say the posts have to be this far apart, they have to be this gauge, and your fabric also has to be defined in such a way that it could handle some type of intrusion or incursion that may happen. Chainlink is a good way to go. If longevity is your top reason, I would say Chainlink fence is probably the most long-lasting fence you'll ever get. You could buy it once and probably keep it there. Then we have wood fences. Now, I like wood. It's my favorite, and I think obviously it is the most green, we'll say, environmentally friendly fence, because obviously you didn't have to manufacture it. God had the trees grow, and we cut them down and we build fences with them, and they keep growing. They don't have to be manufactured anywhere. So I would say wood is your most ecologically friendly solution, and your most versatile, because you can make that fence look any way you want, where you can customize it yourself and build it in any way you want based on your local area. If you're in an HOA, that's not going to be true. You'll have to follow the rules that are there for that style of fence. So with that style of fence, you could put it in, and you know what? Over time, if you wanted that to change, you could change up the panels and leave in the posts. And how long will the post last? Well, we have solutions for that. If you're putting in wood fences, you'd use a rot barrier to prevent the post from rotting in the ground. We have great solutions for that to help you have that post at least have a 20-year warranty, and sometimes a 40-year warranty. And then, of course, on the posts themselves, we have our fence armor guards that will prevent weed whacker damage and lawn equipment damage. Over the years, if you wanted to change up those panels, you could, or even if you wanted to change your color. Maybe what's in fashion this year, and 5 years from now, you want it to look like mahogany. Go ahead, you can do that. Whereas with any other of the style fences I spoke about, you're pretty much stuck. So wooden fences, I think, give you the most versatility as far as how they would morph over the years. The key is to keep it looking great. Start with the post before you put it in the ground. Make sure that it has a rot barrier and is designed to handle years of life in the ground. And then you want to protect it, of course, from weed whackers and lawn equipment, if that's what you're doing. If you don't happen to be weed whacking or anything around there, then you don't need a guard. That's not an issue. By using the guards, you also prevent the use of herbicides, because some people actually will spray Roundup or something like that to kill the grass around the fence. And that's, really bad on the earth. Why use chemicals to kill the grass and really make the area look ugly around your fence when you could just let the grass grow, trim it, make it look great, and not have to worry about using those chemicals not only on the earth but on you. And it's another cost. You don't have to incur that cost if you just protect those posts. So these are some things that not often are talked about, and I thought, we have a window and a forum here to talk about that. And really, fence armor, we're agnostic. Whatever fence you want, we've got guards to protect them. We have solutions to make them look better and last longer. Thank you for joining us on this program. I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you on our next broadcast.